Iraq on the edge. Government forces storm a protest camp, igniting a wave of violence across the country. It's raising fears of a return to sectarian fighting that left tens of thousands dead just a few years ago. This is Inside Story. Hello there, I'm Laura Kyle. Welcome to the programme. Gun battles and deadly clashes have broken out across Iraq after government security forces stormed a Sunni protest camp. It's the bloodiest fighting yet since thousands of Sunni Muslims started holding demonstrations against the Shia-led government in December. Sunni protesters accuse the government of discrimination and neglect and of pursuing a sectarian agenda. Plus, they're calling for the resignation of Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. It's all serving to pose a stubborn challenge to Iraq's stability a decade after the toppling of Saddam Hussein. Now, the focus of the security operation was an encampment in the northern town of Hawija, a response, the government says, to an earlier attack on a police and army checkpoint. News of the raid quickly spread to other Sunni areas. Security forces were attacked in Ramadi and Fallujah, and in Suleiman Beg and Mosul. Now, in the past 4 months, tens of thousands have been taking to the streets of Iraq's Sunni-majority provinces of Anbar, Nineveh, Salahuddin, Kirkuk and Diyala, demanding an end to what they call second-class treatment by Iraq's Shia-led government. Well, Inside Story has correspondents in Baghdad and in northern Iraq, where the worst of the fighting has been taking place.
This is a spark that really threatens to ignite across the country, across Sunni communities. It's the first time that this killing on this wide a scale has been seen by the Iraqi army against their own people. The government, of course, says these weren't ordinary protesters or ordinary citizens, and it believes it's in a fight for survival. It says the protests have been infiltrated by al-Qaeda and Ba'athist elements. And it says that it will find out who's responsible for the killings of Iraqi soldiers. There's been a commission set up, but there isn't a lot of faith that that commission will have much success. Political leaders say they're not clear who's in charge of these demonstrations that started in Sunni areas in December. They've taken an increasingly hardline turn. And with a disintegrating coalition government, Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki under attack both by Kurds, his own partners, and the resignations of at least 2 Sunni cabinet ministers, that coalition government as well seems to be on shaky ground.
The raid on Hawija has deepened divisions within Iraqi politicians. We understand that 2 Sunni ministers have quit their jobs in protest. We also understand from a statement issued by the Speaker of the Iraqi Parliament calling the attack a heinous crime and a blow to democracy. We have the United States also issuing a statement calling for an investigation and for self-restraint. But what's more alarming is the call made by Sunni tribesmen in different parts of Iraq, and they basically are calling on the tribesmen to be ready and to get their weapons ready to defend their land, their honor and their lives.
Let's bring in our guests now. We have Abdul Munaim al-Mullah, a London-based Iraqi affairs analyst and protest organiser. In Washington, D.C., we have Phyllis Bennis, a director at the Institute for Policy Studies and advisor to UN officials on Middle East issues. And completing our panel today, Salah Hashimi, a lawyer and spokesman for the Iraqi League in the UK. Let's start, if we can, by trying to clear up what happened at Hawija yesterday, because the area is blocked off. We've got different accounts from each side. Abdul Munaim al-Mullah, what have you been hearing?
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, what happened in Al-Hawija yesterday, it is we can summarize it in one word: it's a massacre. It's a genocide against the Iraqi people, and the problem is. The whole Western media and the whole international community has been turned a blind eye on this genocide and this massacre, which happened among the peaceful protesters, peaceful Iraqi protesters in Al-Hawija city. And to be honest, that was the plan set up by al-Maliki and its forces to start with Al-Hawija and then to move on into the other demonstration yards like in Ramadi, in Fallujah, in Mosul, and in Samarra and Salah ad-Din. I think it's been set up very well, and it's been planned very well by al-Maliki and its government, and with all the accumulated hostility against the Iraqi people. I think al-Maliki has been set up a very well planned to attack those peaceful protesters and to accuse them of attacking its troops on the date, specifically on the date of the election dates or voting date in Iraq. Why al-Maliki didn't, the only question that we can raise here is why al-Maliki didn't attack those peaceful protesters since December. They were demonstrating since December. Why he didn't attack them only on the date of the election?
Okay, you've started off the show with some very strong words. Let me just bring in some other panellists, because there is going to be a long time to have a more say today. But Salah Hashimi, strong words used there at the start of the show. Yes, the events in Hawija called a massacre. Do you think it's that cut and dry?
Well, let me first of all allow me to offer my sincere condolences to the loved ones and those families of those who lost their lives yesterday in Hawija. First of all, let me disagree with your introduction that this will lead to a sectarian strife. There is absolutely no indication that this is a sectarian issue. It is between peaceful demonstrators and a government which happens to be dominated by Shia elements in Iraq. The Sunni community and the Shia community remain to be at peace with each other. In fact, early reports do suggest that plenty of messages have been received from the southern regions of Iraq in support of the demonstrators and in support of the peacefulness of the demonstrations. That's number one. With regards to a massacre, I think early reports suggest that there was a scuffle between Iraqi soldiers slightly away from the demonstrations in Hawija, and that scuffle resulted in one of them being dead. Because of the media blackout on the area, the government suggested that the demonstrators were armed and they were violent, and that they were the ones who killed the soldier. As a result of which, troops massed on the demonstrations in Hawija and subsequently raided them by not only army forces but by so-called SWAT teams. Those teams are completely anonymous. Their faces are not shown. No one knows where they come from, and no one knows who trained them. So we have peaceful demonstrators, and I say peaceful because until now we haven't had any evidence, a shred of evidence presented by the government that those demonstrators were armed or that they fired at anybody. They've been there for many, many months and nothing has happened. So why now? I would suggest, like my friend has just said, that there is a hidden agenda. But I wouldn't agree as to the motives that he suggested. I think there were others. And if you allow me more time, I will say what they are.
Phyllis Bennis, just have to play a little bit of devil's advocate here in light of the fact we don't have any representative from Maliki's Shia-led government. They say that they've found heavy weapons in this protest camp in Hawija. Do you think that there is any truth to that claim?
I'm not on the ground, so I can't say with any certainty what is true or not true. I think that what we have to look at is not only the reality that there is a wide range of peaceful mobilization across Iraqi society. Iraqi civil society has been in motion in extraordinary, impressive ways. Yes, it's been nonviolent, but that's not the only thing. It's also been broad-based. It has challenged the existing, for example, the only existing labor law that still exists in Iraq is the one remaining law of the Saddam Hussein period, which is the law that prohibits the creation of trade unions within the state sector, like the oil workers. So the oil workers have been facing terrible repression. There's a great environmental movement that's trying to rebuild the marshes that were turned into desert during the war. So there's this great mobilization of Iraqi civil society that's now underway. That's challenging the existence of a sectarian governing system that was put in place by the United States at the very beginning of its occupation, where you had a U.S.-imposed system based on the creation of sectarian-based parties, sectarian-based power division, and that's what we're seeing the result of now. It's, I'm sure, true, although, I'm not on the ground, but I'm sure that what one of my colleagues has said, that at the level of people, that there is still a wide range of national identity. Not everyone has succumbed to the sectarian pressure to divide Sunni and Shia, to divide Arab and Kurd. But the reality is that the system that the U.S. imposed in the earliest stages of its occupation, and that remains in power today, with the Maliki government certainly benefiting from that system, is a thoroughly sectarian system that has given rise to extraordinary levels of sectarian fighting across the country. And we're seeing horrific results of it now.
It's this political backdrop that has given rise to the sectarian nature of these protests, because they are happening, aren't they, in mainly Sunni areas. There's no denying that.
Right, but I think the point is that the demands of the protests are not primarily sectarian demands. There have been protests for all kinds of things, having to do with the economy, having to do with the imbalance of power. Certainly there is the view among some Sunnis that it's a sectarian reason that they don't have jobs, for instance, and that there are Shia who are getting access to the scarce jobs, that sort of thing. So in that sense, it would be a sectarian demand, but only in the sense that it's a demand for equality, for an end to sectarian prejudice and sectarian discrimination. So yes, there have been sectarian protests. There have also been a wide range of non-sectarian protests.
Okay, Mr. Al-Mullah, would you agree with that? What do you say are the main demands here of the protesters?
Well, I agree with the statement of Salah and Phil as well. But let me ask you one question. Let's define the sectarianism here. Is the Iraqi people, whom they were living together for centuries, they were sectarian among them? I mean, is the Iraqi society has claimed of being sectarian for the last centuries they were living together? The answer is no. The sectarian card has been applied and imposed into the Iraqi society since the invasion of Iraq in 2003. This is something we should know, and everybody knows about it. And we should know that the Iraqi government and the Transactional Security Council, which been established by the occupation army in 2003, was based on a sectarian rules or a sectarian conditions. So this is to start with. And to answer the question that's been raised by my colleague Salah about the people whom they held the attack on the peaceful protesters, I would say, for many testimonies I have received from Hawija people living in Hawija, whom they were trying to lead into the demonstration yard to support their kids, the protesters with food and the basic needs of life. They've been stopped by the SWAT forces and some other forces. They claimed they cannot speak Arabic at all, which means that the Quds Brigade has sent a force to support the SWAT forces, which they were backed at the Battalion 12 and the Tigris operational army. So in here we should know, and everybody should know, that the troops whom they attacked, the peaceful protesters in Al-Hawija city, they were among them. They were Iranian. There were forces from Al-Quds Brigade whom they've been supported by Ali Ghaidan, the commander of the Iraqi troops, who was the commander of the whole operation.
Phyllis, perhaps going to jump in. Phyllis, that's why quite a lot of assertions being made there. Iranian troops involved firing on protesters. Do you agree with that?
Again, I don't think we have anywhere near enough information at this point. The fact that there are claims that some troops could not speak Arabic doesn't necessarily mean they were speaking Farsi. Perhaps they were speaking English. Perhaps they were U.S. Occupation contractors. You know, there's a lot of possibilities here. We don't have the information. I think the key point is that there are massive problems in Iraq today that are the result of the U.S. invasion and occupation. They have to do with the sectarian nature of the government. They have to do with corruption. They have to do with the lack of compensation and reparations that are the obligation of the United States to rebuild the infrastructure that still denies ordinary Iraqis access to the clean water and electricity that they did have for so many years before the sanctions and before the invasion. So all of these are huge problems facing Iraq. It's not surprising, it's only surprising that it has not been absolutely more common even earlier, that there are massive protests going on to demand these rights of a government which is seen widely as both corrupt and sectarian in nature, backed by the United States, but oriented more towards Iran. That's the reality of the government we have in Iraq today. Okay. And I think that when we see these massive protests, it's looking at and challenging all of those post-occupation realities.
Absolutely. Well, this is a struggle that's going back many years. Under Saddam Hussein, power was concentrated in the hands of Sunni Muslims. That dynamic changed following the US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. Sectarian and intercommunal fighting between 2005 and 2007 pushed the country to the brink of civil war, and violence claimed tens of thousands of lives. Now, the big test for Iraq came when the last US troops pulled out in December 2011. Violence did ease, but there's been squabbling since then amongst Shia and Sunni and also Kurdish parties about how to share power. Now, the political indecision has rekindled simmering frustrations, leading to this latest protest movement, which is Sunni in nature. Salah Hashimi, why have we not seen Nouri al-Maliki come out since this raid in Hawija? Why have we not seen him come out to speak to the Iraqi people as a whole to try to calm the situation?
Well, I think it's probably the best demonstration that he has absolutely nothing to tell to people to calm them down, because his forces acted in a very violent manner. Let me first of all agree with your guest in Washington, because I think the word that she was looking for was the disproportionate representation of a certain sector of society within the security forces and within the government. And that's what the demonstrators are actually angry about. You asked a very good question as to what the demonstrators are actually asking. They're asking for the de-Baathification law to be applied correctly and not disproportionately on them rather than others. 2, to free the women prisoners, because the government of Iraq has proven itself not to be worthy of holding women prisoners, because whilst they were in detention, they were raped and tortured. And within Iraqi society, which can be actually described as a conservative society, this thing cannot go on, because people are very, very sensitive towards women issues. Now, there is also the issue of endemic corruption within Iraq, which I agree with your guest in Washington. Corruption has reached all levels, i.e. the government itself, the security forces, even the judiciary. And we had a few months ago the Minister for Higher Education coming out and announcing to us all that he was going to import professors from Iran to teach at Iraqi universities. Now you can imagine the sensitivities towards Iraqi students being taught by Iranian professors, as if we don't have in Iraq.
Not helpful. There are lots of areas clearly that the government is not helping the situation. I'm just wondering at this point, we've got a government investigation underway, and it's going to be headed, isn't it, by the Sunni Deputy Prime Minister, Salah Mutlaq. Do you think that that's going to be an open, credible investigation that's going to highlight all of these issues?
Well, first of all, you need to look at who Salih al-Mutlaq is. He is one of, he's been said to be one of al-Maliki's allies. And when he went to one of the demonstrations in Ramadi, if I remember correctly, early on, back in December last year, I think he was not received very well by the demonstrators. So I don't think he will be the impartial arbitrator on this. What we need is a truly independent committee of this government, because this government has demonstrated that it has never been able to carry out either an impartial inquiry or come out with results that people were convicted because of. So what's the reason for having these inquiries when they are endless, they are countless, and they come out with no results whatsoever?
Because the US has been worried that Iraq could be sucked into the conflict in Syria. It's a Sunni-led rebellion that's fighting against Bashar al-Assad's government in Syria. And Sunni fighters from Iraq are said to have joined that fight. Iraq's government is on the side of Assad, and the US is concerned that flights from Iran through Iraqi airspace may be supplying weapons to Syria. It's raising fears of wider regional instability. Phyllis Bennis, how has, do you think, the Syrian conflict hardened Sunnis in their fight against their government?
Well, again, I don't think this is purely a question of Sunnis that are against it and Shia that are supportive of the government. This is a sectarian system that's been put into place. It doesn't mean that all the people in those various groups, whether Sunni, Shia, Arab, Kurds, are necessarily fighting each other. That's certainly not the case. There is, as we've heard, a long history of Iraqis living together. But these are sectarian systems that were imposed by the United States. That's what we're dealing with. And we're now seeing several different wars being waged out of the Syrian conflict, only one of which has to do with the Syrian people against a very brutal government. The others have to do with regional battles for hegemony. They have to do with sectarian lines between Sunni and Shia on the regional basis. And certainly Iraq is not immune to that. We have seen the evidence of or the claims, I would say, not evidence yet has been made public, but we've seen the claims about the Iraqi permission for Iranian planes to use Iraqi airspace to fly weapons. So these kinds of allegations have gone on, and I think that, you know, the notion that somehow the U.S. is looking at this, I think the whole region is very nervous about the explosion of several different wars out of the war in Syria, and certainly all of that takes place, as does the Arab Spring as a whole, in the context of a region that was thoroughly destabilized by the United States invasion and occupation of Iraq. That's one of the ongoing realities that the region as a whole faces. The U.S. ended its physical occupation, withdrew its troops on the basis of the agreement signed with the Iraqi government, but did so leaving behind a government that was not what it wanted. The U.S. wanted a government that would, among other things, give it permission to attack Iran from Iraq.
Okay.
It did not do that. It has a government
I'm just going to jump in there
more
because we are
allied with
running out of
Iran.
time. It also left a very important element, which I'm not sure we've touched properly on yet, Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Abdul Mualim al-Mullah, to what extent do you think they're to blame from this a level of this violence, a degree of this violence? I'm thinking especially of attacks against police and army checkpoints.
Well, for al-Maliki and its government, every Sunni is a member of al-Qaeda. Let's be clear about this. For al-Maliki and the new pride of al-Maliki, Salih al-Mutlaq, with his call out for the new remarks to be led by al-Maliki is just a honeymoon he's trying to complete with al-Maliki to boost the vote, and he couldn't succeed at even this. About the sectarian, or actually about the demand of the peaceful protesters, let's be clear that peaceful protesters, they have a legitimate rights. This we can precise all their demand in these two words. It is a legitimate rights for the peaceful protesters. Al-Maliki ignored these legitimate rights. Whatever is going to be these rights, it is definitely it is a human right for any human being living in this world to have it. Iraqi people, they felt shadowed by al-Maliki government. They humiliated by al-Maliki government, and they've been tortured under the hostility.
Salah Hashimi, we've got one very last thought from you. The extent that this Hawija raid is the spark that has against the all-out violence in Iraq. What are your fears there?
Well, first of all, we need to understand Iraqi society. What happened was that members of tribes were killed at the hands of security forces. The way the tribal system works is that if you kill a member of the tribe, the whole tribe is an enemy of the state now. So what you have, not only that, but the extended tribes, the other tribes within the provinces of Salah ad-Din, Mosul and Al-Anbar province, have risen against the government because they considered the ones who were killed in Hawija are their own members.
Okay, and
now
there we
you
have to
a
leave
spark.
it. My apologies, we have run out of time, but thank you very much to all our guests today. It's been a fascinating discussion. Of course, as ever, we need much more time. Abdul Muanim Al-Mula, Phyllis Bennis and Salah Hashimi. And thank you too very much for joining us. Don't forget, you can find this story and many more at aljazeera.com. Just follow the links for programmes and Inside Story, and do leave us your comments as well. Bye for now.